Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show is brought to you by Air Patrol North. Visit airpatrolnorth.ca. Our guest today, the godfather of Canadian sports talk radio, Bob McCown. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show coming up. Our guest today hails from Columbus, Ohio. He is a former golf pro. He started his broadcasting career in Toronto, the original PA announcer for the Blue Jays, talk show host for CKFH and CJCL. He started and hosted Sportsline on Global, longtime host of Primetime Sports, named On-Air Talent of the Year, founder of Feuds Productions, a winery owner, host of the Bob McCown Show on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, the man known as Bobcat, Bob McCown. Bob, it's great to have you on the show, my friend.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Bob. I'm doing pretty good. I know you've got some struggles, which we're going to get into, but I want to start at the beginning, which we like to do. So you're born in Columbus, Ohio. How do you end up in Toronto?
Well, my mom was Canadian. She was her family was from Toronto. My dad was an American. He passed away when I was only a year old. So my mom moved everybody back to Toronto, and that's where I grew up.
So I understand at one time you were going to be a golf pro. What changed that direction for you?
Pro.
How good a golfer were you? How good a golfer
decent enough. I was a teenager and I played golf and got pretty good at it. Joined the club when I was, I guess, about 15 years old. And I went from a 12 handicap to a 2 handicap in 1 year. So I guess at that point I feared I was good enough to play and decided to try the business. Now, I didn't get into it as a player necessarily. I wound up as a pro shop guy at Richmond Hill Golf Club. And I didn't play much. I played the Canadian Tour 1 year and played in Florida for a year. But the competition was so difficult that I resorted to teaching more than playing and became a teaching pro. Spent 5 years in the golf business. And then in the golf business in Canada, you need a winter job. And so I had some members. By this point, I was at Trafalgar Golf Club in Oakville. And one of my members was in radio, in sales. And he offered me a job. And so I took that for the winter and just stayed there and didn't go back to the golf business at all.
So it was sort of, you found it to be sort of a lucrative deal, this sales business and radio?
Well, I didn't really, I did okay at it. It was a job and they paid me and I wasn't good at it. I was in sales and I really wasn't very good at it. I didn't aspire to be a broadcaster in any way, shape or form and didn't think I was on a path to that. But I wound up working in Sarnia, Ontario, and in a small station, you have, the right to fool around with the equipment and fool around with the studios at night when nobody was around. And so I did that. I went in at night and I did commercials and things for my clients. And that sort of started the process. Then I came to Toronto and landed at CKFH. And I was working with Ron Hewitt. And he was a sportscaster and sales manager. And after about 6 months, I decided I'd take a shot at broadcasting. So I went in and told him I was going to do that. And I said, I'll go to Aurelia or someplace and, see if I'm any good at it. And if I'm not, I'll go back in the golf business because I didn't like the sales very much. And he said, eventually, you can't quit. And I said, well, it's not your choice. I can't quit and I'm going to. And so I told him what I wanted to do. And he said, well, do it here. I'll let you do 5 sportscasts a day, 7:30, 8:30 in the morning, 12:30 noon, at 4:30 and 5:30 at night. And in the meantime, I want you to keep selling. So do that the rest of the time during the day. So I started doing that, and I did that for, I don't know, a short period, few months maybe. I finally went to him and I said, I like the broadcasting part. I don't like the sales part still. So I want out of that. Eventually, he let me. And ultimately, I started doing a talk show 1 day a week. That expanded to 5 days a week. And, I went on from there.
Yeah, when you were doing that, nobody else was doing it at the time, really, not in Canada, as far as I was aware. Not a lengthy show like you guys
Well,
had at CKFA.
Dave Hodge was doing a 1 hour show once a week on CFRV. And, there were other people that did shows now and then, but nobody did it full time. No, I was the first to do it full time.
So, how did you end up getting the gig with the Blue Jays, the public address announcing?
Well, I don't really remember, to tell you the truth, how I got it, but I knew Howard Stark, but he was one of the first people hired by the Blue Jays as a PR director, and I had interviewed Pete Bavasi numerous times on my show. So it was just like that. I just, whether they said to me, "Do you want to do it?" or I said to them, I don't remember. But I got the gig as PA announcer the first
What were
year.
those? What were those early days like? Those first days of
Well,
Blue Jays baseball.
as you can see by the video, they weren't very good, but we had fun, and I only did it for 1 year, but it was a great experience, a great thing for me in terms of my resume. Even though it wasn't a high paying position, I made $50 a game.
Wow.
So I wasn't getting rich by any stretch of the imagination. But I was also doing my talk show from the ballpark every night. So I was there anyway. So it was good. I enjoyed it very much.
Right, just an extra $50 to put in your pocket, which is, I
That
think,
was
what.
it.
Yeah, I think that's what Fergie Oliver used to pay the players that he would interview too, if I'm not mistaken.
Might be. Could be. Yep. I didn't get
Yeah,
rich. Let me put it to you that way.
yeah. So how did you end up at Sportsline, and how did that come about?
I started at sports at the Global in 1981. I got fired from radio, and they sold the company was sold by Foster Hewitt to Telemedia, and the first thing they did was get rid of me. And so after a period of time, I got an offer from Global, and it was to do a horse racing show. And I went in and I talked to them, and I said, "Look, I don't really want to do a horse racing show, but I'll do a general sports show if you want. I'll do a half hour every night." Now this was ESPN had just started, I think, and I hadn't seen ESPN, but I knew that they were doing half hour sportscasts on that channel. TSN didn't exist, and Sportsnet didn't exist. But I said, "Look, I'll do this if you want." And fortunately, they said yes. So we started Sportsline in 1981. I did from 11:30 to 12 o'clock every night, and we had nothing to fall back on, nothing to look at and see what other people were doing. We had to make it up all by ourselves. So I think we did a pretty good job. We got a big audience. We had over 1 million people a night, and advertising was full. The breweries competed against each other for sponsorship, so it worked out well.
Yeah, so we have a clip here from a show you did in June of 1982, I believe. Let's
Oh,
roll
really?
that, Vic. Yeah.
The city of St. Catharines is outraged, not because of high unemployment, high taxes, high interest rates, but because they may be on the verge of losing a hockey team they never really had. Tonight on Sportsline, we'll give you the developments that led up to this story and meet the one-man ringleader who's trying to change some minds any way he can. We'll also take a look at the World Cup and how international sporting events can be reduced to political battles. We'll show you this year's American League Baseball All-Stars as announced tonight. Latest on the Argos as they prepare for their opener on Thursday. And the Blizzard as they get ready for the Montreal Manic. All the scores, horse racing, and more. It's all to come in the next 30 minutes here on Sportsline.
You know, it's funny when I was watching, I was thinking to myself, Bob sounds a little bit like a young Bob Costas, and I remember coming to Toronto for a
That's
job
funny.
interview. Yeah. In April of 1984, I came to Toronto for a job interview, and I remember turning on Sportsline and Global and watching your show. I couldn't believe that you guys had a half an hour to fill every night. Uh,
Yep.
did you have enough? Did you have enough,
Oh,
material to
yeah,
fill it?
every night. Oh, yeah, it was no problem. No problem whatsoever. The Costas reference is interesting because at one point while I was at Global, I got offered a job. Well, to apply for a job at NBC. Uh, Brian Gumbel went to the Today Show. He left NFL Today, went to the Today Show, and so they needed a host for that. So I had an agent in the U.S. and he put my name in. I guess there were about 1,000 people who applied for the job. Anyway, they got down to 3, and I was one of them. And I don't know who the other third guy was, but I didn't get the job. But the guy who got the job was Bob Costas. That was his first. That's where he really started because he was in St. Louis at KMOX doing local stuff. This was his first national appearance was on that show. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I didn't get the job. I stayed at Global, but at least my name was referenced with Costas. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good, being a finalist and on the whim of a program director, we might have seen Bob McCown on all those NBC broadcasts instead of Bob Costas, right? It could have
Yeah, he
happened that
might have, but he didn't, right?
way. So
Excuse me.
tell me when you look back at that kid Bob from 1982, what are your
Well, the
thoughts?
weird thing was the beard, right? I was the
Yeah.
first guy to have a beard on TV all the time. And I didn't do that for any particular reason. I had a beard and they said it was okay, so I kept it. My hair was pretty long. I've always had longish hair, I guess. So that wasn't a big deal. But people used to talk about the beard a fair bit.
Well, I suppose if NBC had hired you and they said shave out the beard, you might have done that, right?
For the money, yeah, I would have. You bet.
Yeah. Well, Rod Black had to shave off his mustache when he went to TSN. Remember that?
Scott.
I read your book recently, McCown's Law: The 100 Greatest Hockey Arguments. Stephen Brunt says you were almost a pro bowler in the book. Tell us about that because he
Well,
didn't
that's not
expand on
quite
that.
true. I had a friend
Okay.
who was a bowling guy, and
Yeah.
I somehow got into the Canadian Open. It was, I think, in Hamilton. And I bowled like maybe once a month or something. And I wasn't really good at it. I wasn't bad, but I wasn't really good. I wasn't good enough to play. But they let me play, and they had a beard rule too. And they let my beard exist. So, I was making, like, I remember when I showed up at the lanes, all these pro bowlers were looking at me sideways. And it was because of my beard, because they knew that nobody was allowed to bowl with a beard. But there I was. So I remember this. Mark Roth was in that tournament. I don't know if you remember Mark Roth, but he was one of the top bowlers in the world
I
at that
remember the
point.
name. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And I don't remember if I beat him overall. I think he played 10 or 20 games or something.
Yeah.
But I know I beat him in at least the first game I played. So to be ahead of Mark Roth was a big deal for me. I didn't make the cut. I think I averaged like 166 or something for as many games as I played, which, for an average guy isn't terrible. But on the Pro Bowlers tour, it stinks.
Yeah.
So that was my one appearance on with the PBA tour, and I never went back. And I've hardly bowled since. I've bowled in probably 30, 40 years.
Right. So another thing that Brunt says in the book is that you would have been a good lawyer, but you couldn't afford the pay cut. Is that true?
Well, I don't know about that. At least at that time, I will tell you that it got to the point where I was making very good money. I believe I was the top paid sportscaster in the country. In fact, I'm almost certain of that.
Right.
And to the best of my knowledge, number two in pay was making half of what I was making. So I was well paid. I thank them very much for that.
Right. So going back to telemedia to go to work for them after they fired you, tell us about that situation. Was that some
Yeah.
tense
Well,
moments or?
not really. I was living in Las Vegas at the time. I'd quit broadcasting. I quit Global in '84 and moved to Vegas. And then because I'd worked at CKFH and CJCL, I knew a lot of those people, and they wound up calling me. And they called me, and I had my or not a cell phone, but a cordless phone,
Yeah.
and I was in the pool on a float when I answered the phone, and they said, "Do you want to come back to Toronto and work for us?" And I looked up. I looked up at the sky. The sky was blue. The grass was green. I said, "No, I'm not interested." So that was that. And then a day later or 2 days later, they called again. And as it would have it, I was in the pool on the float again. Sky was blue, grass was green. I said no a second time. Then there was a space of about a week or so, and they called the third time to offer me a job. Well, it happened to be raining, and I
Oh,
was inside. Of course, it never rains in Vegas, but this day it was raining, and I wasn't outside. And they made me another offer, and I finally said, "Yeah, okay, I'll take it." So I wound up coming back to Toronto. This was 1988, I guess. So I'd been out of the business for 4 years and hadn't done any broadcasting at all. And came back and did a talk show with Bill Waters, and Rob Whitehead was my producer. So the three of us put this show together on CJCL, and it was on I think at 6 o'clock at night. So that was kind of the restart of my career.
right. And the early days of primetime sports. Okay, so Vic, we're rolling ahead here. So you co-hosted Primetime Sports, as you mentioned, a number of guys over the years, but and you did mention Bill Waters' name. So we have a little bit of that. Let's roll that. We had
Oh,
Bill
really?
on the show, and he talked about. I had Bill on the show a while back. And he talked about working with the
Okay.
Bobcat.
Bob
We're
was a
just
real
here
pro.
we go.
I enjoyed Bob. He had a sense of humor. He didn't take himself too seriously, at least with me alone. Like we were just two people in a booth, and so I enjoyed Bob.
So
A
okay, so now we're
young
gonna
guy there, huh?
So we're going to roll back again because back in 1990, you were on that show with some broadcasting legends. John Wells was host of the show, joined by Pat Marsden and Bill, and we have a little bit
Right.
of that from the 1990 Sports Page show. Let's
He has
listen.
convinced me with his performance here today that he truly is, as many of us have maintained, a legend in his own mind. I mean, he is.
Thank you, thank you,
No.
thank you. So Bob, what do the Blue Jays take from this, the fact that Oakland can be beaten? I don't think anything. The Blue Jays had a better record against Oakland this year than Oakland had against them. The Blue Jays proved that they can beat Oakland. And, as we said all year, watching this Blue Jay team flounder around in the middle of the pack and chasing Boston, if they got to the postseason, they could beat Oakland. And anybody could beat Oakland on a given day in a given series. Remember, they lost, 4 out of 5 last year in the American League Championship Series? But Oakland played their butts off in that series. They probably couldn't have played any better than they played against
And
the
Ricky
Blue
Henderson
Jays.
was superlative, Bob. He carried them.
We had like 750 or something
yeah.
ridiculous against them. That's not going to happen.
Could I just jump in here?
No,
I can't.
gotta go.
Time out.
Page 2 coming up. More baseball talk. The DH rule is under fire. We'll be back.
So some good insight there on the Jays, and by the way.
Three good friends. That we had a
Yes.
lot of fun on that show, I'll tell you.
Yeah. What are your thoughts when you see guys like Marston and Waters and Woods
Well, I
together?
mean, they're classic. You know, they were the guys that I grew up with, really, and then they became, you know, partners, if you will, on various enterprises. So I haven't seen anything like that in a long, long time. So thank you for showing that clip from me. I don't care about the audience, whatever they think, but I enjoyed seeing it. Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Paul Patscoop dug up some good stuff for us. So you created a persona. Before we talk about that, let's listen to an interview that you did a few years back. Let's watch that.
I came to that realization. I said, Bob, you're too boring. That's why nobody is calling. You need to be a character. So who's the character going to be? But I just decided that the character would be obnoxious, opinionated, loudmouthed, arrogant, larger than life. And so I literally went like that and turned on this new character. And I created this guy, the a-hole talk show host.
So the a-hole talk show host, Bob, is a real Bob
Yeah.
McCown, a much nicer guy.
Well, I hope so. It's, that was from a documentary about me called Pant Load.
Yeah.
And so I remember doing that. And that's that what I said was true. You know, I did create this character because I was failing at being a talk show host, because I was being myself and I was really quite boring. So I realized that, you know, if you're going to be on radio at that point and ultimately on television, you've got to be an actor. And so I looked at acting, and I realized that, you know, people that we see on stage, we don't see them as themselves. We see them in the role they've created. So they've done all kinds of homework. They've decided what the character is like, what he speaks like, what he says, everything. And so I did that. I wrote down all the things that I thought the character that I wanted to be should be, that would attract the biggest audience. I had no idea whether I was going to be successful or not, but this was an a-hole who wasn't afraid to say anything, who took adverse positions on most things, and then justified them, and wouldn't let anybody tell him he was wrong. You know, he was just a jerk, and so that's what I became, or my character became, and of course, ultimately, it became fairly well known. And when people would meet me on the street, I'd have to go into character because that's what they expected.
Right.
So it was tough. You know, I'd come home at night and it would take me a while to get out of that character and into the real me. And sometimes it was really difficult. So that's the story of the a-hole Bob McCown. Yep.
Well, it worked out all right because, as you mentioned, you were making twice what anybody else was in this country in the business, so you're doing okay. You want to talk about your acting? Let's talk about this commercial bit you did in 1993, time when the Leafs had been showing some promise, and you did a spot with Doug Gilmour.
Oh yeah,
Good
Dougie
shot
was-
in there. You know, you're a guy who looks for the best things in life. Isn't that right, Doug?
Right, Bob.
And that's why you tune into my morning show every day on the Fan 1430. Isn't that right, Doug?
Yeah, right, Bob.
And of course, you tune in because research has found me to be intelligent, insightful, and opinionated. Right, Doug?
Wrong, Bob.
Wrong?
I tune in for the news every hour at 25 and 55.
The Bob McCown Show. Everything a guy needs to start the day.
So those were interesting times. So the Leafs were doing pretty good, and what was it
Yeah,
like
Doug and I
Dougie?
became pals, you know, and I wound up buying his house, as a matter of fact, in Bridle Path. And we
Wow.
together owned a restaurant called the Gardoonies. I don't know if you remember, it was on
Yes, I
Church
do.
Street,
Yeah.
I think, right across from Maple Leaf Gardens. And Doug and I were partners in that business. And we continue, we don't talk all the time, but we continue to have a relationship. He's a good guy, and he was a friend for a long time.
Where does he rank on your list of all-time Leafs?
Well, he'd be near the top, wouldn't he? I mean, I was a kid when Dave Keon played, but I was always a Keon fan. So I guess Keon would be number one in terms of my history with the Maple Leafs. But Dougie would be right there, number two, number three, maybe. I don't know. He was a great. He wasn't there long, but he was certainly a real impact player when he was there, wasn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and those were fun times,
They
92,
sure were.
93, some fun
Yep.
times. So, we had another, well-known broadcaster on the show a couple of weeks back, Dan Shulman, who, talked about learning from the sports legend. Let's listen to that.
Bob was
Okay.
a very established person in the market. He was a star, obviously, and he was great to me. But it was a little intimidating at times. There were some areas where I felt we clicked seamlessly, and some areas where it didn't come as naturally. It wasn't my whole time there. It was maybe a year, and we crossed over for 1 hour. So but we had fun. I learned a lot from him. He had great connections and a great way of interviewing people and a great way of putting his opinions on the air. I mean, you can't learn as a young radio talk show host, which is what I was then, and what at that point that's what I thought I would always be. I didn't know I would end up doing play by play, but you can't learn more from anybody than you can learn from Bob McCown. I mean, everybody knows what kind of career he had. So again, it was one of those experiences, and I've had a lot of them where it's how did I get here moment? Like 1989, I graduate from Western. 1990, I'm in Barrie. 1991, I'm at CJCL, but I'm doing sportscasts. 1992, I'm doing talk shows. And 1993, I'm doing primetime sports. Like it was fast.
So, what are your thoughts when you see Dan and where he went with
Well,
his career?
he's I don't have to say it, but he's a great broadcaster. What I remember about Danny is I think I recognized his ability very quickly. In fact, I know I did. I remember one day I lived in a house that was only steps away from the radio station, and I could see the radio station out my front window. And I remember one Saturday I was sitting at home. I had the radio on, and Dan came on, did something, a sportscast, I think, and it was so good. He was young still. He had only done maybe 2 or 3 times. He come down from Barrie, done a weekend sportscast. But I got up from my chair and I went to the radio station for no other reason than to tell him how good I thought he was, and that I thought he had a real career, and keep at it, whatever. And I remember doing that, and I was right. He became a star very quickly, and a real good broadcaster, isn't
Amazing. His voice, I think he's got the best voice in baseball, no doubt
he?
about
He
it.
has a great voice. Yeah.
Finn Scully had a pretty good voice, but Dan's right up there. So, okay, a few years later now, here's another spot from Primetime Sports. Let's roll that one. That would be Primetime Sports promo, Vic. Okay, we'll look at it in a bit. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm going to go back to your book for just a second, Bob. You explain the importance of puck luck in your book. Is that what has kept the Toronto Maple Leafs from reaching the pinnacle? Is the lack of puck luck?
No, it's incompetence, is what it is. It's not puck luck. Um, they haven't been able to put together a group of people that know what they're doing. And there've been lots of people who've been highly acclaimed, but have had no real success. The best Leaf teams were probably those Gilmour teams, Gilmour and Andrewchuk, etc., in the early '90s. I think they were the best Leaf teams. Sittler did a great job. He was a great individual player, but he didn't have much support. And the teams of the last 4 or 5 years, they score lots of goals, but all the money's in 4 players, and you can't win that way. Now, whether the general manager of the time, who's now in Pittsburgh, still thinks he was right. I imagine he does, but history will show he wasn't right because they never won playoff series.
Yeah, and they haven't won one yet. Do you like the fact that Treliving has moved in and made a few changes? Do you think they've got
Well,
a better
I
shot
like
now?
Jim Treliving. Treliving was on my podcast several times. I like the guy. Is he any good at what he does? Will he have a different vision? Who knows? Is he going to be allowed to do what he wants to do? I don't know that either, because the president of the team thinks he knows as much or more than anybody else. So I'm not looking for the Leafs to have a great year, to tell you the truth. I've predicted they'll be above 500, but not much. They'll be well below what they did last year. I don't
Right.
see them as being a Stanley Cup contender.
So if they were to get there, what would they need to do to get there?
Well, I think you got to undo it and redo it. I don't think it's one thing. I think you should have done this before. You're going to have to break up the big four. You're spending how much? 50 million bucks on four guys. You can't do that in today's NHL. The problem with the Maple Leafs has been and continues to be defense. They just don't have a strong enough defense. And they can't get a strong enough defense because they can't afford it. They're spending too much money on those four guys up front. And while they can score, they're just not that theory of success doesn't really work, in my opinion. And it's not just my opinion. I think historically, if you look at the team, they haven't done anything. They've won one playoff series in 5 years, and that'll tell you everything you need to know.
Right. So in your book, you predicted that the game would become faster, more skill would be involved, enforcers would be non-existent, and the book was written a while
And
ago. That pretty much happened, didn't it? Yeah.
yeah, I wrote the book in 2008. So the book is 15 years old now. And just about everything I wanted and predicted in the NHL has happened. And Gary Bettman would lie to you and tell you that he didn't think I was nuts, but he did. He he is I mean, he's pro NHL. I understand that, but he didn't think there was a problem in the NHL in 2008, and ultimately they changed just about everything. And I
Yeah.
think the game is better. I enjoy watching it more than I did when there was brawls every 15 minutes. You know,
Right.
and
Yeah.
do I miss the hitting? No, there's still hitting in the game. There's enough hitting to keep me interested. I think the product is better now. And I think they think that too. But they wouldn't have said that in 2008.
No, and so here's another primetime sports promo that this is from the 25th anniversary special. Let's have a load of let's have a look at that one, Vic.
Primetime sports, when you hear that, you think McCown right away.
A source of constant controversy.
Consider the stupidity of an individual who takes the opportunity to slag me, but in the midst of that says he listens every night.
And after 25 years, we can safely say he's got the perfect face for radio. Join us for a special presentation celebrating the career of Bob McCown. Pant Load.
Did you enjoy that presentation?
Well, I like doing that. That was a documentary on me, which was kind of stupid because my production company produced it. And I will tell you, I had nothing to do with it. Nothing whatsoever. I didn't see it till the debut. So I had no idea what it was going to look like. And it was certainly about me, but it was also about sports radio in across North America and how it developed and became huge in the 90s and then into the early 2000s. WFAN in New York became a really big station. Their afternoon drive show was legendary. So it wasn't just about Bob McCown. But that's what that came from.
It was a great show, no doubt about it. We got another clip, actually. This is from 2009. You and Stephen Brunt. Stephen spent a lot of time on your show, as well as John Shannon and others. But Doug McClain is the guest here. And this
Oh,
is
God.
interesting. You're talking about Jim Balsillie and his bid to be an NHL owner at the time. And McClain had said some stuff about Balsillie. Here we go.
I don't think I ever said to you, McGowan, that...
That's McCown, McLean.
McCown, sorry, that I should, that Jim Balsillie shouldn't be an owner in the NHL. As a matter of fact, if you go back and pull out some other tapes, you'll find that on many occasions I said I thought he should be an owner and it should be tried. I was confused why people couldn't work this out, but I was critical. I'm not saying I wasn't. But anyway, go ahead, Bob.
What you actually did say, Doug.
Because I've heard you ran all the tapes you could muster up, but it's not unlike you when somebody's not in the studio to battle you face to face that you're at your best.
I was hoping that you would be here today. Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm waiting.
I mean, I assume you're in PEI or
we'll be
Phoenix
back on
or whatever.
the radio with you, Bob. And I mean, and for you to say it was suicidal for me with the NHL, it was suicidal for me with the NHL when I became a friend of yours. Go ahead, I'm waiting.
Well, I guess the term friendship would be your perspective on it, but I don't know about that.
We are friends. We've got.
Well,
we have to drive your ratings. So
how do you turn from being pro Bettman, anti Balsillie to suddenly pro Balsillie?
Well, because I've spent the last 3 weeks discussing the situation with them, and obviously. I've come across to saying maybe it can work. And I'm not anti-Bettman. I'm not anti-NHL. I've been in the NHL for a long time. I think that I can be a great bridge to bring this together.
Okay, what are your thoughts when you remember that diatribe?
That was an interesting time. McLean and I fought like crazy over that. But there was a behind-the-scenes thing. I went to Kitchener and met with Jim Balsillie and sat in his office, and we talked for a couple of hours. And so I knew exactly what Balsillie was doing at the time. And I got pissed off because McLean, nosed his way in there and became kind of the counsel for Balsillie for a period of time. And think about it. What jobs in the NHL has McLean had since then? None.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he screwed himself because he tied himself to Balsillie. And the NHL hated Balsillie. I don't think justifiably, but that's the way it was because Balsillie was trying to do stuff not contrary to the NHL rules, but he's trying to work around the situation, with Nashville and Hamilton and then Pittsburgh. And Balsillie was a smart guy, but ultimately his company went tits up, So I guess it was not smart.
Yeah, yeah.
They sure
Because
were
at the
big when I
time-
went there, though.
Yeah, it at the time it just seemed like a lost opportunity to me for the NHL. You got one of the wealthiest guys around, and he wants to be part of your gang. Why wouldn't that work out? Like it just didn't make sense.
Well, I
to me.
know, and it was BlackBerry, and people remember BlackBerry was monstrously big at that time. It was one of the biggest companies in the world. Why wouldn't you want to be involved with them if you're the NHL?
Yeah.
And it fell apart.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it was the NHL's fault or Balsillie's fault in the way he did things, but anyway, McLean got involved with Balsillie and then never did anything in the NHL again.
Right.
So there you go.
Yeah.
That's all I was saying. And McLean knew that I was talking to Balsillie, and he still went around me to talk to him, and that pissed me off.
Right.
So
yeah.
we
Didn't know
managed to get
about the
over that.
backstory there, but I found that clip was pretty.
We
pretty
managed to get
interesting.
over it, over the years.
Yeah.
But I've had feuds with more than a few big name people.
Yeah.
Don Cherry and
Yeah.
I talked for 5 years. The commissioner of the NHL and I did talk. I used to say that it took $5.1 billion to get us together. And that was Rogers buying the NHL deal. 'Cause the
Yeah.
first time we spoke in 5 years was at the announcement of that deal. He came to Rogers, and I went to the press conference, and I saw him there, and he came up and shook my hand, and we've been full case since then, but it took $5.1 billion deal to get us together.
To make that happen. That was a big deal, no doubt about that. So, okay, so
Yeah.
everything comes to an end, as we know, after 31 years, your final show on Primetime Sports, and here was your sign-off. Let's listen to that.
Tens of thousands of guests, more than 50,000 phone calls that I've taken, and a handful of listeners and viewers. There is really no way to know how to say so long, except to be, at least in my opinion, as brief as you can be and as sincere as you can be. I do thank you, the people here at Rogers, and mostly those of you who fill out little ballots and tell us how many people are watching or listening. Thank you for permitting me to have occupied this seat for the last 31 consecutive years. It has been an extraordinary ride, but I advise you now, my butt hurts. I'm gone. There will be no more. Good night and goodbye from Toronto.
So your butt hurt, but there were other factors involved. Were there, Bob, other factors involved? And besides
Well,
the
they
fact
fired
that
me.
but
There's
Oh.
no question about it. They fired me, so I had no choice. I didn't retire. I had to quit. They said,
Right.
"Get out of here." Now they wanted me to stay for a period of time, and I said no. So I did about 2 weeks of shows and then walked away. But
well,
they paid me a lot of money to go too because I had 18 months left on my contract. So I got a
Right.
nice big check out of it. And I was
Yeah.
nice to Rogers. And of course, the truth is, screw them.
Yeah.
They fired me. I know they gave me a job for a long period of time, but ultimately they've done everything to inhibit my podcast and other things that I've tried to do. So the way they feel about, I guess, about me is inexplicable to me.
Right.
But what we did was
Well,
we gave them a good show, a big show, and made them tens of millions of dollars. That's all we did. There was no animosity during that run. I got along with everybody. All of a sudden, I guess somebody came in and decided that I was making too much money. But I wasn't the only one. Nick Kiprios got fired ultimately. John Shannon got fired. There was somebody else that was big that got fired. And it was all monetary. It had
right.
nothing to do with talent. And if you look at what happened to that radio station since I left, it's been nothing but a disaster. Their ratings are way down, and their revenue is almost nothing. So the decision that was made, that decision was a bad decision. So I have no
Right.
sympathy for them whatsoever. They
Yeah.
got what they deserved.
But it's the same. It was the same with us, right? Bell did the same thing. They came through and chop, 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 and Rogers chop, 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 and it's all about the bean counters, and it's all about making profits and cutting, the bottom line, and
Well, they
thinking that
think it's
somehow
about
that's going to
making
work.
profit. We made the head of Rogers Media told me that Primetime Sports, my show, made them. They paid a lot of money for it. Don't get me wrong. We made about $7 million a year on that show. That's what he said. He told me that after I was fired. And
Yeah.
they don't make $1 million. They don't make anything. So the decision, it costs them a fortune a year. Now I know it's Rogers, and they don't really care about the money because their money comes from other sources. But that wasn't a smart decision as far as I'm concerned.
So, Bob, you've had a health scare recently, a pretty serious one. Tell us what happened to you.
Well, I had 2 strokes. and I was in bad shape after the second stroke. I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk at all. So I've had to come back, try and make a comeback. I've been working hard. It's been about 4 months. And, I can talk now, as you can see, but I do get saliva in my mouth, a lot of saliva. I hope I haven't spit up too much.
No.
My walking is okay, but it's not perfect by any stretch. So I'm still in recovery. It's really, really, really been hard. I must tell you. I don't wish it on anybody. I didn't know what to expect from having a stroke, but I spent 5 weeks in the hospital. Had to be carted around in a wheelchair or on a bed with wheels, and I've managed to improve quite a bit, but I'm not back yet doing the podcast on a daily basis. That's what I want to get back to. So I'm hoping in the next couple of months I'll be able to do that. This is the longest I have talked to anybody, is talking to you, probably in 6, 7 months.
Wow.
I just don't get that opportunity very often. And I'm not quite confident yet that I'm good enough. I can hear my voice. My voice now is close to me, but
Yeah.
it's not me really. There is a rasp to it that I imagine, I hope eventually I get rid of. And I want to go back to doing the podcast because it's what I love, not to mention the fact that it pays the bills.
Right. Well, the podcast is great, and for those who don't know about it, it is the Bob McCown's podcast. It's available on YouTube. But where else can we find it?
Well, it's everywhere, every place.
Yeah.
We put up just a snippet on YouTube every day to lure people in. We were on Sirius Radio for 2 years, from 6 to 7 p.m. We stopped doing that. I don't know two other radio companies have expressed an interest, so we'll see what happens there. But it's available wherever you get your podcast from.
Right. And and John Shannon's been there the whole time, sort of holding down the fort. I noticed you've had Paul Jones on there hosting, and Darren Millard, and a lot of old friends.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that support.
Dave Hodge, yeah. A lot of my friends have stepped in to fill in for me in the last 4 or 5 months. And Shannon is doing a great job hosting it. Who knows? Maybe when I'm ready to come back, he'll tell me to screw off and he'll do his own podcast. I don't know. We'll see.
Sorry, McCown. We got no time for you, buddy. We just have no time.
Yeah, I think so. That might be true. I've known Shannon a long time, but I don't know whether I trust him or not.
Right.
We'll
Hey,
find
so
out.
do you still have the winery?
No, I sold the winery last year. I still own the wine. It's Stony Ridge wine. There's a bottle right back there. I think you can see.
Okay.
Over my shoulder. That's tragically hip wine. I still own the wine. We still sell it at the same place, but the name of the winery has changed, and the ownership has changed. I own 5% or something of it, so I have a very, very small piece. I used to own 100%. I owned that, and I owned Mike Weir wine too. Back in the day,
Right.
cost me a fortune.
Right.
Lost a lot of money on those businesses. But so now I'm okay. I have no debt. I make a few bucks off the wine, and life is okay. Financially, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, and the podcast is successful as ever, for sure.
Well, it is successful. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it is good. It's a good show. And so before we go, before I let you go, there's always a question I want to ask you: is what's the best advice you've ever received?
Received?
Well,
Well, I haven't
received.
I haven't received much. I remember one thing I said to Elliot Friedman when he was young and just starting out, and he got offered a job, and people would come to me for advice. I don't know why, but they did. And I remember, is profanity allowed on this podcast?
Sure.
Okay. Elliot came to me one day and he said, I'm really happy with what I'm doing, but I got offered this job and blah 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 blah. Should I take it? And I thought for a second and I said to him, don't fuck with happiness. And I'll tell you, if you went to Elliot right now, I'm positive he would acknowledge that verbally, exactly what I said to him, because he remembered it and he's repeated it to several people since then. And I believe in it. You know, I think if you're happy doing what you're doing, don't screw around and try something else. I've turned down jobs for several jobs for more money than I was making because I was happy with what I was doing. And every single time it worked out for me. In the long run, it was the right thing to do. So that's what I told him. So what people didn't talk to me much. I don't know what they were intimidated or what, but they'd come to me for advice. And I remember that piece. I haven't told anybody else that, but I did tell Elliot that. And I'm glad he listened because look at what's happened to his career. You know, he's on Hockey Night. He's a star. Good for him.
Right. Elliot's done very well. You know, he's got Bob McCown money. His life is going pretty
Well,
good.
I don't know about that. But,
yeah. Listen, Bobcat, thank you so much for taking this time, buddy. It's been great catching up.
My pleasure.
I really
Thank you
enjoyed
very
this.
much. Thank you very much for having me. I'm so glad I was able to do it because I didn't think I could do, 45 minutes or however long we've been on. I'm glad I was able to do it. I hope the audience got something out of this.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. I know I did. That's great. Thanks, Bobcat.
Thanks, Mal. Okay. Bye-bye.
More sports when we come back. Thanks.
What our kids breathe matters more than ever. But how can you tell if a school is safe to breathe in? If you could actually see what's in the air, would you keep them home? Introducing Air Patrol, making the invisible visible, ensuring schools are safer for everyone. Breathe safely.
My Swiss pick of the week. Last week I went with Lantana Lady in the opening race on Thursday's card at Woodbine. Yamar, who hasn't raced much, got out to a quick start, and she never looked back. Lantana Lady was in the hunt for a bit, but Yamar, with Sofia Vives aboard, shook it off, pulled away for the win. Retail Therapist got up for second. Lantana Lady, the number 4 horse, settled for third. Mark Cassie, the trainer of Yamar, who picks up her first win in almost 2 years. Gabe Grossberg, the owner. This week, I'm looking at Thursday night's third race, maiden 2-year-olds covering 6.5 furlongs. Fast and Ready will be ridden by Saheen Savachi, a Mark Cassie trainee. It's just one race for this horse, but some impressive workouts, and also Cassie's a trainer. What can you say? I also like the 246 Exactor or Triactor box. Go to woodbine.com for all the latest racing info, replays on YouTube. You can also get the latest from Woodbine Thoroughbred and Woodbine Standardbred on Instagram and X. Go to hpibet.com, darkhorsebets.com, and bet365 for your wagering options.
Discover the finest patio experience in Toronto at the Stella Artois Terrace. Situated on the 3rd floor of Woodbine Racetrack, delight in mouth-watering shared appetizer and raise a toast to the evening. Relish expertly prepared main courses that will tantalize your taste buds. Capture the beauty of sunsets. Indulge in delectable desserts. Secure your reservation today and immerse yourself in the excitement of the races. Enjoy an unparalleled view of the thrilling finish line.
Well, it's a special place, and the food is great. The atmosphere, it's really a nice experience.
Experience the enchantment of Stella Artois Terrace. Open 4 days a week. Undoubtedly the city's premier patio destination.
Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. the only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Attention security seekers. Ready to take control? Introducing Corporate Protection and Investigative Services, your ultimate solution. Retailers tired of losing profits to theft? Our retail loss prevention experts have you covered. Mobile patrol, close body protection, insured door persons, we've got your security needs covered from all angles. Background investigations and civil recovery programs, trust us for thorough solutions. Licensed by the Ministry of Solicitor General, fully insured and bonded. Visit www.corporateprotection.ca or call 1-800-827-1692 for top-notch security and private investigation services. MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business accounting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the need of their clients in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to do business and personal strategies to help people and organizations to succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, their team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca today to learn more. And we want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great folks. We highly recommend them all. Thank you for your support of Canadian and local sports. A reminder that the show is available on iTunes, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcasts, and Pocket Casts, as well as the Spanglish Network and Zingo TV and Buzz TV Live. Also, check out the show on YouTube. All of our past great shows and shorts are on there, clips, lots of stuff to look at, and it's free, folks. Subscribe. It's free. Like. Thanks again to Bob McCown for being on the program. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in their early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today. Let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678.
Air quality at work matters more than ever, but there's no way to tell if a space is safe to breathe in. If you could actually see what's in the air, would you even come to work? Introducing Air Patrol, making the invisible visible, ensuring workplaces are safer for everyone. Breathe safely.
Rooted in 60 years of tradition, Sleepy Hollow is a private golf club with a friendly community of members just minutes from Toronto. With mature trees and rolling fairways, Sleepy Hollow provides a challenging and enjoyable experience for passionate golfers. Enjoy great golf, amazing dining, and a picturesque patio second to none. Visit SleepyHollowCountryClub.com. Hi there, I'm Joe Tilley. Are you ready for an adventure of a lifetime? Next March, during the enchanting cherry blossom season, join me and my wife for an unforgettable 2-week journey to Japan and South Korea. In Japan, you'll experience the magic of the season as we visit the stunning Osaka Castle against a backdrop of cherry blossoms. Feed the adorable Sika deer at Nara Park, glide through picturesque landscapes on the famed bullet train, cruise on Lake Kawaguchi, and witness the awe-inspiring view of Mount Fuji. Relax in natural hot springs and savor a delightful Fuji dinner banquet while dressing in traditional robes. And of course, we'll dive into Tokyo's cutting-edge technology scene. In Korea, dress in elegant hanbok attire and step back in time at Cheongdokgung Palace. Wander through Andong Village, a true glimpse into Korea's rich heritage. Delight your taste buds with the flavors of Korean barbecue. We'll even visit the DMZ area to get a glimpse of mysterious North Korea. And guess what? This incredible journey is all yours for just $54.99, all-inclusive, with direct flights from Vancouver, or $58.99 from Toronto. Book now to unlock up to an extra $1,700 in upgrades and savings. Let's make some memories. Let's explore. Let's travel. Guests on Joe Tilley Sports receive a gift certificate from Classica Imports. Top of the line imported men's clothing. Check out the Classica Essential Collection now. Go to shopclassica.com.